Good morning. My name is Yakyma. I have a pleasure to know some of you, and some of you know me, but probably all of you by now figured out that that's no Texan accent. And that's because I was born and grew up in the Soviet Union, the country that declared a war on church. And what's interesting about that is that after 70 years of trying to destroy church by various means, by killing people, including priests and parishioners, imprisoning many, trying to impose all kinds of pressure. Actually, none of it worked. It worked backwards, because at the end of the day, today, for instance, in Ukraine alone, we have around maybe 7,000 Orthodox parishes. This is compared to the United States, where we have around 2,000, and Ukraine is 10 times as small, population-wise, right? In Western Ukraine, where I'm originally from, to this day, people, instead of saying good morning, greet each other by saying, when they see each other on the street, by saying, Slava Isusu Christu, and the reply is Slava Navike, which is glory to Jesus Christ, glory forever. They say this instead of good morning. So all of that propaganda, all of that other stuff, all of that pressure did not work. It worked backwards. And you know what's a real mystery and a miracle about this whole phenomenon is that regular people were the ones who saved the church. Regular people were the ones who provided material support to church. And that's something we have to understand about living in the Soviet Union. It's like you get into what is called there a food store, which is obviously a misnomer in Soviet Union, but you would usually see bread and lots of vinegar, right? I understand why you need bread, but why you need that much vinegar is totally beyond me. And sometimes it's just vinegar. I remember that my primary task as a kid was, as soon as I get back from school, I wasn't in church that often, but was to rush to the food store to get in line, because those lines for bread could get sometimes like 3 hours long. You know, we have that funny and sad joke these days, all of us immigrants from Eastern Europe, that in Soviet Union every day was Black Friday. But it's actually a little sad too. And you know, sometimes there's just not enough for everyone. And yet, devoid of the basic necessities, the people managed to support the church, and not just support the church, but to help it blossom into something absolutely wonderful. So how does that happen is quite a mystery, but I guess when being under the pressure, when being really challenged by circumstances, there's something that is deep down in us that I guess is no longer suppressed. That spirit that drives us towards a mission, towards something meaningful, that determines what really matters in our life and what's secondary, that's what is in action. So, you know, today's generation in those countries, they know that their parents and their grandparents, they weren't saints, they weren't heroes, but in the critical moment, they made a tough but right decision. And I strongly believe that there is no difference between us, any of us humans, well, maybe except accents, a little bit. But deep down, we all have that important component, that spirit that drives us towards a mission, that spirit that drives us to distinguish what is truly meaningful to our life and everything else. And maybe it's sometimes way too suppressed, but it's there. Just have to listen to it. And you know, There was no such thing back then, that the church calling for help and you can turn your back to it or pretend like you didn't hear. So today, our church needs help, and it's calling for help. We are experiencing some budget deficit. It's actually significant, and it's important to resolve this for us as a church to be able to operate. And you know, maybe a generation or two further, they will say about us that, hey, you know, those guys weren't saints, weren't heroes, but in that important moment, they made the right decision. And that's why we have our church. So, wouldn't that be cool? It is important, my only lesson from that, and being a part of that society, which is very different and yet so similar, is that we're all capable of great things. It's very simple. Just because we're all humans. Period. End of story. So today this church that is your church and my church too needs help. So please help. Thank you.
God bless you.